We'll be starting in a few moments. It's a couple of minutes early yet. For those of you who are already on the Zoom live platform, please feel free to use chat to talk with each other. We don't monitor chat. We will make some helpful posts there, like important links to the speaker's information and things like that throughout. But generally, you can just chat with each other, introduce yourself, say what's interesting to you about what's being shared, ask questions to each other. There is a Q&A spot, and in the Q&A spot, you will find the opportunity to tell us about technical problems that you're having, and we'll try to help you with those if we can, as well as later on, we will have a Q&A section, and I'll repeat all that. We're not usually using the raise hand function, so if you're raising your hand, I'm not really sure what you're doing that for, so please do ask it in the Q&A section. Try to use raised hands just for movement sections. There won't be a movement section in this particular talk. YouTube should be up and streaming now, and please come on over from the YouTube live stream into the Zoom webinar platform. So you're watching a screen over there on our live stream page. If you just look below that screen, it says, click here to join the live webinar. And we have room for hundreds of you to come over here instead of hundreds of you staying over on the live stream, YouTube live stream. And then you can ask questions here, actually ask questions or chat with others. So it's really very nice to have you come on over and join us. We'll be starting in about another minute. I'll repeat some of those things when we do start. Welcome, this is Cynthia Allen for the Feldenkrais Awareness Summit. Thank you so much for joining us for this session. Again, if you're over on the YouTube live stream, we would love to have you come over and join us in the live webinar platform. Just click on the button below the picture of me that you're seeing streaming right now that says this is the Zoom webinar link. And it's pretty easy. You click and you'll be in here in no time flat. If you are writing right now in a chat box, that means you're in Zoom. If you're on YouTube Live, you have no opportunity to be in chat with us. And also, just for those of you who are joining us late on Zoom, please do chat with each other as much as you like. We're not monitoring chat. If you have a question or technical difficulty, submit that via Q&A, please. So I'm going to be getting ready now to introduce you to our guest today. Let me just make a couple little screen changes. Okay, well, it is my privilege to introduce you to investigative journalist Cathryn Jakobson Ramin, author of Crooked, Outwitting the Back Pain Industry, see if I can get it on the screen here, and Getting on the Road to Recovery. It's been a phenomenal book, and we'll talk about this a little bit more and why it's so important for all of us. This book was written about by Jane Brody of the New York Times, and in fact led Brody to try out the Feldenkrais method and write about her experience of it, which has led to an incredible explosion between these two events for Feldenkrais practitioners. The paperback of this book is conveniently due out May 9th. So if you haven't bought the hardback, there's plenty of options to buy it and maybe in a little cheaper format. And welcome, Cathryn.
Thanks. I am delighted to be with you, and a very nice introduction too.
Good, good. I'm glad you like it. And I know you've got a lot of interesting things to talk with us about, including your recent trip to New Zealand and Australia. But I wonder if you could just get us started with a little bit about your personal journey that even led you to want to write this book.
Sure. Well, you know, I had written a book previously, one that came out in 2007 called Carved in Sand. And that book's about memory and attention and what happens to it in midlife. And it was wonderful in that I'd been invited to speak all over the country. But what was not wonderful was that I was shaking at the podium because my leg and my low back and my hip hurt so much. It had been ongoing. I had started having back pain as a pretty young teenager, and I coped as people do. But somehow the combination of the book and raising a family and all of that, what's entailed there, really, it had simply pushed me over the edge, and I really wasn't coping anymore. And I decided that although I had tried a lot of different things, I've had a personal trainer, I'd been in, some fairly competitive yoga classes, I'd done a lot to try to resolve the problem, including a fair amount of chiropractic treatment, that I now had to, quote unquote, get serious, because if I didn't, we weren't going to have another book. And I really no idea what that other book was going to be. And I started looking around, and I had the requisite MRI, et cetera, which I described all of this in Crooked. And as the investigative reporter kicked in right away, the patient was like, okay, I'm desperate, I'll do these things. And then the investigative reporter said, just a moment here, what is going on? There's little evidence for anything that is being recommended to me. And I see people, I go into these clinics and medical offices, and I see people lined up for the types of treatment for which there is no evidence. So at that point, I thought I had a double whammy here. I had a book, and I also had to figure out how to deal with my own problems. And I am happy to say that both wound up being quite successful. So.
Yes, good. That's excellent. I mean, we're really glad that you're feeling better, because it's important. I mean, you were functioning. It sounds like not as well, certainly, as you wanted to be, but
better than a lot of people. I remember going to see a surgeon, and I also described this in the book, going to see a very well-known spine surgeon down in the Los Angeles area. And he said to me, so what medications are you on? And I said, I'm sorry, what do you mean? And he said, what prescription medications? And I started describing my thyroid medications. And he's like, no, what painkillers are you on? And I said, I'm not on painkillers. How could I possibly function as a writer on painkillers? I need my brain, working at its fullest capacity. And he couldn't get over it. So, I knew that I was coping better than many, but it wasn't going to be good enough to do the kind of involved.
Well, tell us about a few of the things that you found that you not only didn't find evidence for, but you thought of them as a little bit questionable anyway. I mean, there's a lot of research out there actually on all of these items. I think what you did so beautifully was pull them together into a very readable format for people. But just thinking about the fact that most people start with an X-ray or MRI.
Well, as I think has become palpably obvious over the last 8 or 9 years, we don't want to be sending people off for MRIs, because what is become very clear is that people who have no back pain, who have participated in studies, who have no back pain, who have never had back pain, have X-rays and MRIs that look exactly like the X-rays and MRIs of people who have chronic back pain. It's not a valid assessment tool, and I'm sure that all of the audience listening and watching today is aware of that. But not aware of that are patients, and also, until fairly recently, primary care doctors were not too tuned into that fact. And people always ask me, do you blame the doctors? And I say, no, I really do not blame primary care doctors, because I know what it must be like for them, because I get constant stream of emails from people who have read the book or who have not read the book, but would like advice nevertheless. And the level of desperation that they express is very high, and they don't let up. They don't really let up. They will keep at you until you tell them that, yes, it's okay to have that MRI. It's okay to go ahead and have the surgery. And
Boy,
that's, and that's
that is huge. What you just said there is really huge, because I think we all abdicate our responsibility, tend to abdicate our responsibility and say, out of the desperation, well, but they went ahead and recommended this. But the truth of the matter is that if you push hard on your primary care doctor or your surgeon, they are going to try to give you a solution, even if that solution is weak or even sometimes invasive.
It will give you all kinds of solutions. And one of, I just recently this week was working with a man who's he's 47 years old. He has 2 children. And he was in touch with me having read the book. And he said, I've talked to 4 surgeons and all of them think I should have surgery. What do you think? And I'm thinking, you've seen 4 surgeons. You yourself believe that you should have surgery, or you would not have gone to see 4 surgeons. So I met with him briefly, which I don't normally do, but he happens to live quite near me. And I took one look at him and I saw multiple errant movement patterns that no doubt have created his problem. But there's something going on, some level of circular thinking that's going on in his mind that is something like this. Should I have surgery? Here are all the reasons not to have surgery, but I'm still in pain. I can't get out of the pain. Should I have surgery? And it circles like that. But it doesn't ever leave that particular circle to how else can I recover? It can be very difficult to convince people that, it's going to take a while. It didn't take them 5 minutes to get to the place they're in right now. It may have been years. It could be 18 months. It could be 20 years. It is going to take them a little while to get out. And the way that things work, the way that we've been trained as patients is you shouldn't have to wait. You should be able to take a pill or have a procedure and you'll be fine. And unfortunately, that is not how it works.
I had a close friend a few years ago who was in her latter 60s and very active, and came down with a significant back problem and went in and had the surgery and actually came out not able to walk, was never able to walk again. And I've seen a number of clients that they have what has been termed failed back syndrome.
Right.
Which I love.
I always ask, and who failed here?
Yeah,
exactly.
Failed, yeah.
The onus on the patient, and obviously this is for your friend and for others that I have encountered who have had similar outcomes from surgery. It's clearly not their fault. A mistake was made, not by us, right? It's really not should not be attributed to the patient, and yet it is.
Yeah, and of course, we're not saying that there's never a situation where these surgeries aren't necessary. There's certain types of symptoms and signals that are very emergent and need to be taken care of. The other one that is awfully popular these days are epidural injections or steroid injections of some kind.
Well, the evidence for this is pretty much non-existent unless there's radicular pain. And in the case of radicular pain, the injections usually don't work either. So that, brings to question, how useful are they really? This same man that I was speaking with last week has had 3 epidural steroid injections for the pain going down his leg. None of them have been effective. I've talked to a young woman of 29 who had 14 injections in the past 6 years, none of them effective for more than a couple of weeks, and yet they continue to be given. And in the book, I have a whole chapter about these sorts of interventions called needle jockeys. And this is an enormous money-making operation. And it's very, very hard to say to an interventional pain management doctor who really gives these injections. Primarily, this is his living or her living. Well, there are very few women doing this, but so let's say his living. And say, actually, there's no for what you do, and you just need to stop. You need to shut down because, obviously they're not going to, they can't unless, it becomes illegal to do so. And speaking of that, they frequently are using the drug methylprednisolone, which is the FDA has never approved for use in spinal injections. Now, the FDA does not have to approve a drug for a physician to use it. It can be used off label. But there are specific reasons why this should never be used in the spine, because if the physician delivering the injection misses and punctures the dura, this medication will go directly into the cerebrospinal fluid and directly into the brain. It can do a lot of damage. And in the book, I have an interview with a woman who I encountered in a coffee shop in New York who went in almost as one would have Botox to have an injection before her grandchildren came, because she thought it would be great to spend the holidays, a little more pain-free. She was already walking 5 miles a day, so she was not exactly, so encumbered. And she came out unable to walk, and she has never walked again. So they're not free of harm, and that and a pileup of corticosteroids in your system, not a great idea. And yet they're being given, by the hundreds of thousands, and Medicare is paying for those. So that is quite a scam. And I unveiled scam after scam. So the first half of the book is called Problems, and the second half is called Solutions.
Right.
And are there fast, immediate, easy, someone can fix you solutions? No. None of those will be found in my book, because actually they do not exist. No one will fix you. And that is.
So we're talking with Cathryn. Yes, we're talking with Cathryn Jakobson Ramin, and we're very glad to have her here. And so she's going to start segueing us into the solutions instead of all the things that could go wrong as you encounter chronic back pain and overcoming it. And of course, we know that the vast majority of people actually overcome back pain without any kind of intervention, any kind of specific intervention. But there are a number of us who are on some kind of bell curve that it comes along and lingers and lingers and lingers. And those are the people that are, naturally want a better situation, a solution. So what did you start to find that started to turn the corner for you?
Well, what I want to do before we go any further is just let you know that my last name is pronounced Ramin.
Ramin. Oh, thank you so much for telling me that. I've been saying it wrong the whole time. Ramin. Okay.
Times, but I guess that I never brought that up. What else? So what happened? Well, I actually, before I began writing the book, I went ahead and fell for the greatest hype there is, which is minimally invasive laser, quote unquote, spine surgery. And I read, I saw the advertisement in the airline magazine, just like so many people do. And I thought, okay, this makes sense. They seem to know what they're doing. I'm going to check in with them. Free analysis, free evaluation of your MRI. Awesome. I'm a candidate. Awesome. Fly down there, spend 5 days, have the surgery, $8,000 later. The pain in my leg is pretty much gone, but unfortunately, the back pain, of course, prevails, remains, and subsequently substantial spinal instability, because you can't just hack out a piece of bone and hope for the best there. There will be outcomes that are not great from that. And I realized somewhere in there that rehab was going to be essential for me, to the point where ultimately I understood I never needed the surgery in the first place, but that took time for me to get to that. So I began to focus after the surgery on my own rehab. I began with an excellent physical therapist, an independent physical therapist, not part of a large corporate physical therapy group, who really set me to specific exercises that would begin to strengthen and increase mobility. I was obviously very, very stiff and uncomfortable. I could barely get in or out of chair after that surgery. So it was a long road. And people don't really realize that. They are told very often by their surgeons that, yes, I can get rid of that pain down your leg, And it's a minimally invasive surgery, and you'll recover right away. Well, it was not my experience, and it is not the experience of a great many other people I've talked to who still, a couple of years after the surgery, are not all that much better. And they have some interesting new problems because they have now had 9 layers of muscle cut through in order to get down to the spine. And it takes a really long time to get over it. I would say now I'm completely over it. And as I came back from New Zealand and Australia, humping, a bag of camping, hiking, kayaking gear and another bag of work clothes. I did not bring my laptop. That is the last time I will ever travel without my laptop. That was a very dumb idea for me, but I did not have that with me. So at least I lightened that load. But I would say that today I am as strong as any woman I know who's not, say, a marathoner or a 3-day event or something.
Yeah, you feel good about yourself.
I feel good. And I don't know if you can see. Okay. Yeah. See, got shoulders. I've got muscle.
Good for you.
Glutes, ladies and gentlemen. And I was just talking to my trainer.
Can you turn around and show us those glutes too?
I will not do that. You will have to come see me in person.
Okay.
Well, quick aside though, which is really funny. I know you really will appreciate this because I'm 61 years old now, and I am kind of a, either an older sister or mom figure. I am forever inspecting people's glutes to see if they have any. And most recently, I just was down in LA a couple of days ago, and I took an Uber back to the airport, and I'm sitting in the front seat because Uber is a group Uber because I'm too cheap to take my own Uber. And the driver says to me, "Oh, I'm in so much pain." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." Like, no, I don't really want to hear that, but I'm sorry to hear that. What type of pain are you in? "Oh, it's back pain. It's terrible." I said, "Tell me." I said, "You're kind of lucky and kind of not, because I am sitting in the car with you. Tell me about your life." "Well, I drive 15 hours a day. First I drive for Uber, and then I teach driving." And I look over, and he's got the world's worst car seat. He has absolutely, and I looked a little more closely, and he has exactly nothing going on in the glute department. He has completely lost his body. His body is gone. And we get out of the car, and I say, he's telling me what terrible pain he's in, et cetera. I say, "Well," I pick up his shirt and I take a look. And I'm thinking, 15, 20 years ago, this guy would have thought that was the biggest come on ever. But in this case, he is totally not thinking that. So it's good. And then I had to do it again 4 hours later with this young man who lives in my neighborhood. And I had to pick up his shirt and look closely at his glutes. And I'm thinking, I'm getting tired of looking at people's glutes. My own trainer, who I was working with on Tuesday and who I will work with again later today, I said to her, "Diana, you have this really cute athletic figure, and basically you've got really well developed glutes, and it looks good on you. But on me, I'm not loving it." And I said, "I'm just not loving it. I try on a pair of pants or a dress, and I'm just seeing something I'm really not used to seeing because I have developed this." And she said, "I'm sorry, you must have it. There's no way around it. You cannot not have glutes." And I thought, you're absolutely right. I need them.
Well, and actually you raise a really good point that we talk a lot about in the Feldenkrais method, which is your self-image and the importance of how you see yourself and how you want to be in the world, and then learning to reconcile those realities or those changes so that you don't stop yourself from moving towards health because you have an idea about what you should look like or how you should walk or, those kinds of things. You've just run into one of those self-image issues. Yeah.
I've become a very substantial physical presence since I started writing this book. And which is not to say that I feel really great about it, because I was what might be considered a brain on a stick. I mean, I've always been very tall. I was very thin, slender, kind of person. And I'm no longer that person. I am now the person someone hands a suitcase to go into the overhead compartment. And people regard me as, a substantial physical presence. And that has taken a lot of adjusting to for me. That is exactly how I am seen now. And people need to get there. And the walking question, I think, is also a good one, because we are trained. My mother, for instance, had this beautiful model-like figure, very slender, and most of the women in my family are really rail thin. It looks great on them when they are young, and then they become frail. And my mother, made it clear to me that, women who are respectable do not wiggle while they walk. They simply don't do that.
Right.
And when you learn to use your body as it should be used, you actually do wiggle while you walk. There is quite a lot of action going on back there.
Yes.
So,
Actually, for men and for women. For men, you also need a little bit more action there. And that's not as the same as women, but still need it.
You're supposed to move. Your hips and your glutes are supposed to move. They're not supposed to stay stuck still. Yeah. So let's go to what had to happen to make these changes.
Yeah.
As I said, I began the work with a physical therapist, and a very simple set of exercises that were for a long time very hard for me to do. These involved bridges, side planks, front planks, just to build enough strength so that I could actually get into a more active physical rehab program. And then when I began working with Diana, who I refer to as the goddess of exercise in the book, I said to her, I feel like I'm now in pretty good shape because I've been doing these exercises. And she said, you are not. You are a noodle. You don't have anything like enough muscle to hold your own body up. And we're going to have to work on it, and we're going to have to build it. And we did that with resistance training, strength training. The Stuart McGill exercises were used extensively, and I still use those exercises. And I've continued that now for something like 5 years, that routine that I try to do at least twice a week. But I added in other things. I obviously spent time with Marek Wazinski. Hello, Marek, if you're listening, which you probably are. Marek in New York at the Feldenkrais Institute. And I took some classes there. And then I came out and did the same at the San Francisco Feldenkrais Institute, because at that point I was living here. And then I actually used the classes up at Kaiser Permanente in a little bit north of here, where those classes are extremely inexpensive and great group classes. So Feldenkrais became part of my life. Iyengar yoga became a part of my life. And I worked with a woman, first with Manusa Manos, who is a very, very important figure in the development of Iyengar in this country. And then with a person locally named Claire Colvin, who was a wonderful teacher. And had I known the class, who the people were in the class when I joined it, I would have never joined it, because they had all been in the class for about 10 years. Wow. And I figured, it's just like any other yoga class. You pop in, you pop out, you leave early, whatever. No, that's not how Iyengar works. And they were very patient with me. And very nice. And I would, I'd come out of some position and I'd stagger across the room because I was missing most of the muscles necessary to get myself back up onto my feet. And this went on for quite a while. And then slowly, I developed the abilities to do some of the poses. Certainly not all. To this day, have never really become strong enough to do the headstands that the people in the class do regularly. And I don't know if I ever will, but that's okay by me. so I did Feldenkrais, I did Iyengar. Then I did some work with the Alexander technique, but more of that was watching other people be worked with the Alexander technique, which I thought was very, very helpful for people. And even earlier this week with this young man, we went for a walk because I was curious. This person was telling me he could not walk. And of course, we went for about a half-mile walk. And he said, I'm in so much pain. I'm really having to lay low. I said, well, I get that. But I also know that we just went for a half-mile walk and we were talking all the time. And I was watching your face very closely. And I'm not seeing a lot of wincing or you're not pale or sweating, and you definitely have not died from taking this walk. So I really propose that you get off your sofa and start walking. Well, many, many excuses ensued as to why that would be impossible. But what I said to him when we were walking was, let's think Alexander-ish, which is also very Feldenkrais-ish, which is let's not try to haul our bodies upward by cranking our shoulders back or tightening our abs or throwing out our chests or sucking up our guts or any of those things. Let's pretend that you are suspended from the sky by a very, very strong filament from the top of your head. And it was amazing because I saw him just rise.
Yeah.
And he suddenly was light. And I said, how does that? I said, he's a very tall man. I said, that looks much more comfortable. Does that feel comfortable? And he said, yeah, I feel more comfortable like this. And I said, well, let's the two of us, we could both use it. Let's try to maintain this for a little while. And 2 seconds later, I looked over and he's back to having, slouched into his previous position.
Yeah.
But he felt it right away. He felt it right away.
You gave him a taste. People need a taste.
The little things that I picked up along the way, which are obviously nothing compared to what a qualified instructor in any of these disciplines could offer him.
Mm-hmm.
But he could feel it. He could feel the relief. It didn't take 5 months. He could feel the relief.
Yeah.
So I proceeded from, actually, these were not necessarily sequential because you can't take, 10 years to write a book, although I came pretty close with 7. I worked with a couple of Rolfers here in Northern California. And that I found to be remarkably helpful because I was wound up in ways that I myself could not detect. And of course, Feldenkrais is tremendous in helping you unwind those patterns. And I think that's why Jane Brody of the New York Times loved it so much. It's a way of helping you understand patterns that you are completely unaware of. And you can't become aware of patterns you're unaware of unless you have help. It's not going to happen unless somebody helps you get there. And I just had no concept of how complex this was and how much work it was going to take for me to unwind what I had wound up over, really 5 decades of life. Mm-hmm. I suppose that in some ways, the origin of this, it could have been anything. As I said, my mother was a model, stood like a model. That is not good. I'm sure I picked that up from her in some ways. I rode horses, which required me to wear a brace to keep my shoulders back because I didn't have strength to hold myself up, and you're not going to win any blue ribbons looking like an S curve on a horse. I had multiple falls, and one of them was extremely bad. And I think from that time on, I basically walked funny and I developed patterns. And then I sat at a desk pretty much consistently for the next 40 years. So all of those patterns had to be unwound. And between Feldenkrais and Rolfing, they really were, which is not to say that I couldn't unwind a whole bunch more. I still could.
It's true of all of us, yeah.
I know, I look at my right shoulder and I go, huh, what you doing there? Suitcase we're carrying, so what you doing? So, but the awareness that Feldenkrais or Rolfing can build, or the both of them together, really amazing. Very, very, very positive for me. And these are some of the things that are addressed in the book.
Absolutely.
People have written to me, daily. I get emails from people saying, "You've completely changed my mind about how I should go forward. And now could you tell me which would be right for me?" And I'm like, don't know you, for one thing. So that's going to be hard. You know nothing about you. You know everything about me, but I know nothing about you. And I have recommended that many, many people try Feldenkrais. It's one of the first things I look at is, are they in a place where there is a Feldenkrais teacher? And they're not always in a place where there's a Feldenkrais teacher, but frequently we can find one. How old are they? How conditioned are they? I mean, if they're a little bit older or they haven't moved a lot, then the first thing that comes to mind is always Feldenkrais. If they are in some kind of financial straits or very restricted as to what they can do, I always recommend Feldenkrais, because if you do this through a YMCA or JCC or a hospital group, it can be very, very reasonable. And that's a wonderful thing, because you can go through my book and look and go, can't afford that, definitely can't afford that. But I always say to people, there is always a way, and we will find it. We will find a way. And typically doesn't take me that long, because I know what I'm looking for when I run down websites of practitioners in their vicinity. I know the keywords I'm looking for, and I know what I am definitely not looking for. When you find a physiatrist, but number one thing on there are spinal injections on the website, that's the wrong kind of physiatrist. But most laypersons, I am a layperson, by the way, I have no degrees past my bachelor's, but most lay people cannot discern by looking at a website whether this person is for real or not for real. Right. One thing I know is that if it is a certified Feldenkrais teacher, that's for real. And true also of an Iyengar yoga teacher. Not necessarily true of a yoga teacher, certainly not necessarily true of any kind of personal trainer. Chiropractor, crapshoot usually. Some chiropractors are very focused on physical rehab, but many are not, and many are really not. And my own brother, who absolutely should know better, and yesterday sent me a link to a video of a chiropractor doing something completely ridiculous with a tool which I think was meant to find warmer and cooler spots in the spine, and thereby diagnose the level of the problem. And I left him a phone message and I said, "Did you read my book? How could you send me that thing?" I said, "You just don't understand."
Well, we're talking.
I don't get it. What's the matter with you?
I think it can be a hard way to get the message through. We're talking to Cathryn Jakobson Ramin at Cricket, and it's very exciting to have you. And we know that we know that you've made a good difference for people being able to find better solutions, Cathryn. We all have gotten phone calls or people showing up in our classes. I would suspect most of us have anyway. And I certainly know, and actually quoting your book, and I certainly know there are practitioners who received huge volumes of people from the New York Times articles. So we do appreciate the fact that you did this sort of 2-for-1. You not only worked with yourself, but you're actually helping lots and lots of other people at the same time. I just want to say that we are going to take questions and answers, so please start putting your questions in the Q&A box, and we would be happy to have them. Cathryn, you named your talk here, It's All in the Brain, but not a surprise to Moshe in 1940. So what is it that you found in your research that allowed you to come up with that title?
Well, this has been something that's evolved even after the book was published. And I will be publishing a story in Discover magazine sometime this fall on this topic. But in the book, I have a chapter called Head Case. And that chapter deals not with crazy people, but that the fact that chronic pain no longer exists in the site of the lesion. It's no longer what would be called nociceptive pain. It has moved, and it has moved to the brain. And in the book, I talk about central sensitization as a very important phenomenon. And this is the notion that the brain has become sensitized to the point where it is itself generating pain. And I thought that was very important, and the research around it is fascinating, but very, very difficult to bring into the public eye, because you need to basically understand cognitive neuroscience pretty well in order to understand it. I fortunately had written another book about cognitive neuroscience, my first book, so it wasn't completely obscure to me. But to say to someone, hey, you know what? That pain in your back, it's not in your back, it's in your brain, and your brain's making that pain. It's like, yeah, and then what? Now what? What am I supposed to do about that? That's a great to know. My brain is making the pain, but how am I supposed to address it? And the next thing I did really was look at how can you address that? Now, initially, I was looking at exercise as a way to deal with guarding and fear avoidant behavior. And exercise is very effective, especially graded graded quantitative exercise. So, one day you're going to do 2 of these, and the next day you're going to do 3 of them, and the next day you're going to do 4 of them. And eventually you're going to talk your brain out of thinking you are in serious trouble. Your brain has decided, for reasons that, are often very obscure, that when you picked up that newspaper for the, 10,000th time in your life, that this was very, very dangerous to you. So it should call for back spasms that would lock up the whole area, because, your spine is in jeopardy as far as your brain is concerned, and your brain's job is to preserve your life. So you are now locked up because you picked up because you picked up the newspaper. You're not locked up because you picked up the newspaper. You're locked up because you have been, physically inactive for a period of time, or you have failed to develop enough balance and stability. There are a million reasons you're locked up, but it's not because there's a death threat from you picking up the newspaper. So we had this, I sort of had this understanding that exercise could convince your brain otherwise.
Yeah.
Yes, it works. It definitely works. And Feldenkrais can convince your brain otherwise, because we've all been in classes where, there are, especially in New York at the Institute, where it's the world's largest room, and there are maybe 40, 50, 60 people lying on the floor on their mats, and some of those people can't tie their shoes, and others of those people don't walk well, and and others have they don't know that they'll be able to get off the floor once they're down there, but slowly they're all moving, and they're all finding new capacities within themselves, because basically, yes, the physical activity is taking place, but the brain is being reprogrammed. And that's what, to me, Feldenkrais especially is all about. It is reprogramming the brain without the client, patient, participant having any idea that that's happening. Because Okay, I just got a text from my son. He's suffering from back stiffness. What would you suggest? Okay. All right. Leave me alone.
It's not okay to say to your son, read my book, is it?
He's going, he's just had a number of major career decisions, including applying to law school. Do you think that could have anything to do with it? Even just a little bit, possibly. So essentially this opportunity to comfort your brain and say, brain, I am not on the verge of dying here. I will be fine. You can let up. Now, here's a good example. Last week I had a dinner party for 17 women, and I have a rotisserie, and I roasted 4 large chickens. On the second chicken, even though I was wearing my oven gloves, I burned the heck out of my wrist, and really were one of the worst burns I've ever had in a kitchen. And I did, what's supposed to be done, and I covered it with gauze, and I went on my merry way. And every day I took care of it, and and it's healing, and it's, it's half what it was a week ago, and next week it'll be another half gone, and then it'll eventually be gone. And at no point did I feel that my life was in peril from this. But if that same pain occurred in my back, I would be quite convinced that I needed an MRI if I was your average patient. I mean, how could such a thing be happening in your spine? Mm-hmm. Happening to your wrist, you're fine. Happening in your spine, not good, So that's really kind of an overview of my thinking about what's going on in the brain. Then I went off to Australia and New Zealand to spend time with Lorimer Moseley and David Butler, who, I don't know if you know of them.
I would love to know them, but I've been following their work just so carefully for the last 15 years.
They rock. Yeah. They both do. Yeah. And all Feldenkrais practitioners should study their work. Mm-hmm. The books are wonderful. And I can, provide the titles. I mean, Explain Pain is sort of the overview. And if you go and you look that up and look up Lorimer Moseley and David Butler, you'll find them. They're expensive books, but the reason they're expensive is they are self-published, and David Butler's wife has been instrumental in designing them. And they are absolutely beautiful books. The art is gorgeous. They are funny, and they are helpful in many, many ways. And I wanted to meet them because they have a really drastically different understanding of what chronic pain is and where it comes from and how you deal with it. And I don't want to put words into their mouth, so I really want you to look into their thinking and explain pain. But essentially, they talk about DIMS and SIMS. DIMS being danger in me, and SIMS being safety in me. And when danger exceeds safety, your system simply cannot deal with it. And that really is what happened to me when, after dealing with back pain for years and years, I was on the road with a book. I had young teenagers at home. I had enormous pressures just involving parents, etc. And the DIMS, danger in me, far exceeded safety in me. And I never thought, because we don't, to change that. I thought, I am stuck with this really bad feeling. Every day I say, I haven't gotten enough done. Every day I think that I'm playing catch up, and I will never, ever catch up. So danger in me had exceeded safety in me. Mm-hmm. And this is, so Lorimer and David run an incredible thing called Pain Revolution, where annually they have a group of cyclists, bicycle cyclists, not motorcyclists, who ride 800 kilometers or thereabouts into the Australian bush stopping at smaller cities and then into very tiny towns eventually. And they provide a public forum and then a professional forum. And I was with them for 3 days, and I was not riding, I was reporting. I don't think I could have ridden. It was the most arduous cycling I have ever seen, nothing but very steep hills. And essentially, at these forums, these public and professional forums, there were somewhere between 100 and 200 people, even in a very small town. People came from miles and miles away. People came from great distances to hear a new way of thinking about pain that is not lesion oriented. So this was a fascinating experience. And it was really something to watch people, watch the sun come up for people thinking, well, I've been thinking about painkillers and I've been thinking about surgery and injections, which they do all of those things in Australia, by the way, just like here. No different. Although, most countries in the world do not do a lot of those things. Most highly developed countries in the world do not do anywhere near as much surgery or injections or imaging as we do and Australia does. And I saw the light dawn for them, and they began to think about it in a different way. And I have persistently been thinking about it in a different way, which doesn't mean that I can make the DIMS go away. I could be a little bit more realistic about what they are. I can say, yes, I currently, right this very moment, I have 2 very large feature stories due. I have a paperback coming out next week, and it has I need to do an enormous amount of work on all of the social media related things. And I'm leaving for a trip with my husband for our 30th anniversary in approximately 10 days. And you know what? This is scary. It's actually very frightening. Mm-hmm. But, am I likely to suffer permanent harm here? No, I am not. So modifying this notion of danger makes a big difference. It really does.
Absolutely.
And I was talking with this young man last week, and I said, I understand that you're in pain, but we have to talk about what's going on in your life. Really, what is happening here? He had recently left a very good job and started his own consulting business. It was going very well. And he said, oh, it's going very well. I'm really not stressed. I said, so the fact that you are constantly selling and negotiating for new business, that's not stressful? He said, well, that kind of is it. The fact that you have 2 kids on the verge of being teenagers with all of the, requirements around that's not stressful. Yeah, well, it really is. I said, the fact that you can't take the damn garbage out and your wife is probably very, very annoyed with you, that's not stressful. He goes, well, yeah, that is. And I said, well, we're going to have to see about making there be some more positive things going on in your life. And even if that means sitting down with a cup of coffee and listening to a podcast because you like the podcast and for no other reason,
Yeah.
Absolutely. So these are some of the things that have really, it sounds very soft compared to the science, sounds soft, but
it's very effective though. I hope we get some better research as we go along for these softer things, because it's very, very effective. And from what I can see, it's very effective. Are you ready to take a couple questions or comments? Okay. Mm-hmm. Beth, we're going to get ready here to come to you. So just let you know, I'm going to be making you live as soon as I figure that out. Here we go. And you'll need to unmute yourself, Beth. Your microphone will be in the lower left-hand corner that you can just click on top of. Hi. Good to see you.
I be able to? I can't see Beth. I'm seeing an elephant right now. And it's not Beth, I might add. No, I'm seeing
Cathryn, up in the right-hand corner, there's this thing called a gallery view.
Uh-huh.
You can click on that and you'll be able to see her.
I see Beth. Hello, Beth.
We're not hearing you, Beth.
She's muted.
I'm worshiping you is what I said.
Not necessary, undesirable, actually. You will only be disappointed if you do that.
No, I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate your book and your work and your continued sharing of the word, because I'm a physical therapist and having suffered back pain for many years myself, and found my way along, including Feldenkrais, and also medical therapeutic yoga. I just really appreciate the, bringing together of all of that, and also really the sort of expose that your book has been. I've been recommending it to providers of all types, as well as my patients right and left, and, really trying to educate people, because I'm a very holistic minded, provider. And so the whole, intervention that is invasive thing that's been going on has been troubling for me for a long time. And I love that you just spent so much time with David Butler and Lorimer Moseley, because they're also my recent heroes, and I've been spreading that word as well. So it's so fun to see it all come together and have it get more and more publicity on all the fronts that you've shared. So thank you.
Well, thank you. This is great. And as you know, the paperback's coming out soon, so next week. So good time to let your patients know that they can get a hold of it. Do you know that, have you ever attended one of Lorimer Moseley's symposia in this country? Because he's doing something in Los Angeles this coming month, and I'm sure that, there are going to be other options as well. He is training people here, and I think that's tremendous, and I'd like to see much more of it happening. He's also one of the more amusing people. He and David Butler may be the most amusing person I've ever met, but Lorimer's right up there with them. They're fantastic. They really are.
You're right. They're both very entertaining. And yes, I have looked into their courses, but either timeline or location wise, it hasn't worked out for me yet. But I have a bunch of their materials. I've got framed posters in my office and multiple books and all that kind of thing. So definitely loading up there too.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Beth, for joining us. Sarah, we're going to come over to you next. Let me find you. It's good that it takes me a second. That means we have more people on the call with us. And Sarah, your camera will be coming up now. And then you'll need to unmute yourself in the lower left-hand corner of your screen by clicking on the green microphone. Can't hear you yet. There's a green microphone in the lower left-hand corner of your screen that's got a red bar across it. You need to click that.
I don't know if she can hear you, because there. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. I was just amazed by the overlapping of what you said about the alarm reaction and the John Bowlby's work about the attachment theory.
John Bowlby's work about what?
Attachment theory.
Attachment theory. Interesting.
Yeah, because the thing is that when a baby feels in alarm, inside of him the attachment begins, and he searches for the mother's vicinity. And I think that is the same path you described about the pain the threat inside or the outside.
The DIMS and SIMS, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think there is something to that, primarily in the area where when we experience some kind of pain that may not be it's not chronic at that point. and we cannot find comfort right away,
Yeah.
i.e. mother, we cannot, or I think the father too, we cannot find comfort. The brain really panics
Yeah.
and is not able to calm itself down without help. And the help comes by engaging in behaviors that calm it down, self-soothing. I've certainly noticed there's a close relationship between anxiety and chronic pain. And people who are, inherently chronically anxious lack self-soothing mechanisms. I
agree.
don't really have much in the way of self-soothing mechanisms. I'm at a loss for what you do about those things usually. And I think maybe it does have a lot to do with attachment theory, because if you did not receive that immediate response from a parent for whatever reason, maybe the parent was, at work, or it could be a very good reason. The parent was ill. Then your understanding of how to soothe yourself may be limited.
Yeah, it's exactly the same mechanism.
And where are you from?
Italy, from Milan.
Are you calling me? Are you calling in from Milan?
Yeah.
Oh, how fantastic.
We have people from all over the world. Yesterday I had somebody from South Africa, so it's very sweet.
That's wonderful. And I don't know if she can still hear me, but let people know that the book is available on Amazon. They can order it, even though
And it's also in a Kindle version as well as on Audible as an audio.
And if you listen to it on Audible, you're listening to me for 13 hours. So consideration, because I was the narrator for that project.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, and we're going to go to Jan. Take one more here. Jan, I think your microphone will show up now that I've brought you forward.
Hi, Jan. Hello.
Hi. Thank you for your book and your work. And I have to admit, unfortunately, that it's one of many, many, many books I have on my iPad, which I have not yet fully read. But I will be.
Problem.
Yeah. I will be inspired to get back to it and read more of it. But I was very happy to hear that you found classes through Kaiser. I'm a former Kaiser teacher up in Oakland, in the Bay Area. I taught there for 14 years at a class that was started probably 20 to 25 years ago. And unfortunately, Kaiser, in their, I'm calling it infinite wisdom, has cancelled all of their movement classes in our region. This is not just Feldenkrais, but it's yoga, Pilates,
Really?
Tai Chi, and so on. Yes, so they don't appear to consider movement as part of their current Thrive philosophy. So I was wondering whether somebody like you would be able to approach Kaiser, other institutions like Kaiser, with your personal experience and the fact that you have experienced the benefits of our work. I mean, I'm not even thinking just in terms of Feldenkrais, but all the movement modalities.
So are you saying the entirety of Northern California Kaiser, or the whole system?
No, I don't know if it's going to spread throughout, but it's currently our particular region, which is 3 or 4 cities. San Francisco still has classes. And some other, I checked in some of the other further north Kaisers. So I'm not really sure. It was very, very hard to get a clear answer from the management as to what was really going on. But
I think it would be a question of speaking with, the larger Kaiser organization.
Yeah.
They canceled them because they had, some temporary problem, and they have no idea. If you want to send me, I'm not going to be able to address it immediately, but if you want to send me some of the contact information that you have, I'd be happy to have it. You can people should know that the way to contact me is through my website, which is at CJ Ramin, CJRAMIN at cjramin.com.
Okay, great.
She has also, just to make it clear that Cathryn has some incredible resources out there on her website. So very worth knowing about her website. She can give you links to all kinds of current research, links to current Lancet research articles. Oops, I think I just did exactly the wrong thing. Sorry, just a second. I shouldn't have talked at the same time. I just made Cathryn disappear. It's like, sorry about that. Yeah, there you are. There you're back. There's my first big mistake there of the thing, and now you're remuted, Cathryn. So you'll have to unmute yourself again. I'm sorry about that. So it's an incredible website with a lot of different links, and you're always posting. I follow you on Facebook and Twitter, and you're always posting about the newest research, making sure we're available.
Really rest of it. And my Facebook page is Crooked: The Back Book. It's easy to find all of this through my website. You'll have no problem hooking up with all the social media feeds through the website. But yes, I do have a substantial resource section. And of course, Feldenkrais has a very nice place of honor in there. And many, many, many readers have found you through that website, because they don't all email me, only a lot of them, but not all of them. And so the website can really be useful. And in the social media feeds, I really do follow very closely the developments in the peer-reviewed research. And I try to bring that in a way that is satisfying both to the professional community and also to the lay community.
Well, like Beth, I recommend this book heavily. I have been recommending it for, well, has it been out a little over a year now?
A year. I mean,
Yeah,
literally,
I think I got it right away. So
I always know, because it was the same day that James Comey retired. So, shall we say?
yes, I definitely want to make a strong recommendation that all Feldenkrais practitioners that are going to end up listening to, and this is actually, we've got about half Feldenkrais practitioners and half people who are signed up for the summit for their own health or for other professional development. I can definitely recommend it to all Feldenkrais practitioners. I certainly recommend it if you have back pain. If you're someone who works with people with back pain and some of the other ancillary areas, I think it's very worth getting. That research is dense, hard to wade through, and Cathryn has made it very simple for you. So take advantage of the fact that it's coming out on paperback May 9th, or if you want to do a Kindle version, there's really, again, cost is not going to, it doesn't have to be the main reason that you don't get the book, right? And you can always go to the library. So thank you so much, Cathryn. Is there anything you would like to say as we wrap up? This is a closing thought.
Closing thought. Well, I really I appreciate really what the Feldenkrais Institute in New York has done for me, and Marek's work with me. It isn't easy to connect the New York Times with anything, really. And Marek and I really had to work hard to make it happen. And he was right there on top of it the whole way. Plus, I'm giving grand rounds at the hospital for special surgery next week. And I received a lovely and tentative email from Marek asking me if I thought it would be okay if he came, considering he is on staff there. I said, yeah, Marek, it'll be fine. You can definitely join me. Please defend me from the physiatrists.
Get somebody on your team there.
You have a few choice words to say to me, but so far I have to say in the year, there's reason to worry when you publish a book as disruptive as it is, and yet the reception has been so wholeheartedly positive, and I'm just extraordinarily grateful for that and all that you all have done for the book.
Oh, good. Well, we really appreciated it. It's important that people get the information they need, and it's wonderful that you've been willing to take on the role, I guess, of sort of bringing other people along beyond the book. So that's a big additional energy expenditure on your part. So we appreciate that as well. So thank you for being with us today, Cathryn. And we have been listening to Cathryn Jakobson Ramin. She is the author of 2 books, Carved in Sand, When Attention Fails and Memory Fades in Midlife, and Crooked, Outwitting the Back Pain Industry and Getting on the Road to Recovery. She has an excellent website, cjramin.com, that you can find her papers. If you're here on the chat with us, the links to that are already in the chat for you. If you feel later you're going to forget this or you didn't write it down, remember that when you go to feldenkrais.summit.com, you click on any speaker's name, all those links are for you on their speaker page as well. We will be back here at 8 p.m. tonight. We're here every morning, 8 a.m., then 12:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. through May 8th. Starting tomorrow, you'll get a break from me, and Lavinia Plonka will be your guest host for 3 days while I'm off teaching a gate workshop. So you'll have a break with a different host, but three incredible guests a day, just like we had today. So thank you so much. We really appreciate all the interaction. And Cathryn, you're very entertaining and wonderful to have, and much appreciation for all you've done.
Good luck, everybody, and enjoy this. It's a really great online conference webinar.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.